I hope you enjoy my stories. Instead of just clicking thumbs down, please comment and share how we can do better. If you do like our video, then please like and subscribe.
This is a fun one. Now, most people who live around me know who this is. I was sitting on the city bus, heading into town. It was just another ordinary day until she showed up. A young woman with a double pushchair and twins came on the bus and awkwardly parked the pushchair to the side. She looked really tired, probably dealing with the twins all day. A few stops later, that's when the real story starts. This middle-aged woman storms onto the bus. Without wasting a second, she starts screaming at the young mom. "These seats are only for disabled people. I'm disabled. You need to move so I can sit down." The young mom, looking flustered and nervous, tried to explain that she couldn't move the pushchair anywhere else. The bus was pretty full, and navigating that double pushchair without causing a commotion seemed nearly impossible. But nope, the screamer wasn't hearing it. Not a single bit. At this point, the bus driver turns in his seat and speaks up. "Ma'am, there are plenty of disabled seats on that side," he points calmly. "These spots are also designated for pushchairs as well." Of course, the woman wasn't having any of it. "She needs to move. This is ridiculous," she continued shouting, her face turning red like a cherry. The young mum, still frazzled but firm, didn't budge. She simply didn't have anywhere else to go. The rest of us passengers sat in stunned silence, some of us glancing at each other with wide eyes. Finally, after what felt like forever, the screamer found another seat and plopped down, huffing and puffing. The bus could finally continue on its route. Just when I thought the drama was over, the lady added another chapter to the saga. We get to town, and the woman stands up, yelling at the top of her lungs, "You missed my stop." She didn't even ring the bell. "I'm going to tell your manager how you've been treating me." The bus driver, who had clearly had enough, just smiled and said, "Go ahead." Undeterred, the woman responded, "I'm the queen. I need to be treated better." "Well, I'm related to the queen, and you'll be hearing from your manager." She stormed off the bus and headed straight to the bus quarters in town. The rest of us were left shaking our heads in disbelief. This was not my first encounter with this woman, nor would it be my last. My husband and I still see her around town every now and then. Every time we spot her, we exchange knowing glances and call her the Queen. It's become somewhat of an inside joke between us and a few of our friends who were also on that bus that day. It didn't take long before the whole town started referring to her as the Queen. Word spreads fast in small towns, and her claim to royalty became legendary. One day, I found myself sitting on a different bus, but headed to the same town, hoping for a quieter journey. To no avail, the Queen appears again, this time berating another innocent passenger. She seemed to revel in the commotion she caused, her face lighting up in something that looked suspiciously like joy. I didn't know what it was about bus rides that brought out her royal temper, but it was starting to feel like a running gag in a sitcom. A few weeks later, I was at the local grocery store, picking up some essentials, when I saw her again. She was at the customer service desk, causing another ruckus. The poor cashier looked like she was about to cry. "I demand a refund. These apples are bruised. Do you know who I am? I'm related to the Queen, and I demand to be treated like royalty." As amused as I was, it was starting to get out of hand. It was clear that this woman felt entitled to special treatment everywhere she went. Rumor had it that she had tried to pull the same stunt at the doctor's office, the post office, and even the local library. Sometimes, townsfolk shared their own Queen stories, each one more ridiculous than the last. Despite the hilarity of her claims, there were times when I genuinely felt bad for people like the young mum on the bus, who ended up on the receiving end of her tirades. Still, the absurdity of her actions somehow brought the community closer together. It wasn't uncommon to hear someone in town saying, "Better behave, or the Queen will get you." It always resulted in chuckles and eye rolls, a shared moment of levity in our small-town lives. One day, my husband and I were having dinner at a local diner when the Queen walked in. Everyone went quiet, waiting for the inevitable scene. But that day was different. A young waiter walked up to her with a straight face and asked, "How can I serve you, Your Majesty?" For a split second, we all held our breath, wondering how she'd respond. She looked startled, but then, something incredible happened. She smiled. It wasn't a mocking smile, but one of genuine amusement. "I'll have a coffee," she said, almost sheepishly. The waiter nodded and scurried off to get her order. We all exchanged stunned looks. Could this be the turning point? Was the Queen finally softening? She sipped her coffee quietly that night. Not a single complaint. No royal commands. The town seemed a little different after that. The Queen's antics weren't as frequent, and when they did occur, they were milder, less aggressive. Maybe she realized that beneath the theatrics, the town did respect her. If not as royalty, then at least as an indelible part of our community's fabric. And so, the woman we affectionately dubbed the Queen became a quirky, almost endearing character in our small-town story. Every time we spot her now, there's a nod of acknowledgement, a smile, and perhaps a fond salute to the one and only Queen of our little world. I found myself at the downtown library again, trying to drown in my research for this seemingly endless paper due next week. The tranquility of the place was blissful, except for one glaring disturbance that shattered any sense of peace. Karen. Now, I've met some loud individuals in my time, but Karen was in a league of her own. I couldn't believe how much Karen's behavior got under my skin. I mean, really, how hard is it to understand that libraries are meant for silence? There she was, pacing up and down the aisles with her phone glued to her ear, speaking as though the building belonged solely to her. Every word she spat out ricocheted through the archives, and it felt like there was no escape from her grating voice. This is a public space, and I have important calls to make. She snapped at the poor librarian who had the guts to ask her to take the call outside. Seriously? The rest of us were just trying to work in peace. It was like Karen believed her conversations were the epicenter of the universe. Of course, no one else mattered, and so everyone else had to scatter and find quieter corners to read or study. As if the horrible cacophony wasn't bad enough, fate decided enough was enough. Karma finally caught up with her in the most spectacular way. Right in the middle of another one of her loud, meaningless monologues, a tall guy, clearly in a rush, tripped over her ridiculously huge bag that she'd carelessly flung into the aisle. He went crashing down, papers flying everywhere, and his coffee, rich and steaming, spilled all over Karen's expensive handbag. It was a designer one, too, probably worth more than my whole wardrobe. "You idiot! Watch where you're going," Karen shrieked, drawing even more unwanted attention. Her face turned a deep shade of red, veins popping, her rage palpable. The librarian, now visibly annoyed, approached her with a sterner tone than before. "Ma'am," she started with an iron edge to her voice, "this is your final warning. Take your calls outside, or you will have to leave." Karen's reaction was priceless. Flustered, fuming, and clearly embarrassed, she tried to keep hold of whatever fragments of dignity she thought she had left. She huffed and puffed, her breaths loud and erratic, as she gathered her things and stomped towards the exit. The universe, it seemed, wasn't done with her yet. In her fury, she miscalculated and slammed hard into the glass door. The sound reverberated through the library, followed by a collective gasp and a wave of quietly stifled chuckles from everyone she'd been irking. Finally, Karen staggered out, muttering curses, and once again, calmness seeped back into the library. The atmosphere was almost ceremoniously peaceful. I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of common relief with the other patrons. Order had been restored, harmony reclaiming its territory amongst the pages. But this wasn't the end of Karen's saga. Word of her outburst spread. Most of the regulars knew her by sight now, and she'd become somewhat of a legend, but not in a good way. Anytime she dared to return, whispers followed her every move. The librarian, sweet as she was, always kept a watchful eye. Karen, it seemed, had become her special project, always nudging her to adhere to the decorum the rest of us followed without question. Soon, Karen's life outside the library began to unravel too. That tiny incident grew roots. The company she represented during those loud calls found out about her public outburst and less than professional behavior. They fired her. People talk, and in this small town, word travels fast. No one wanted to hire someone infamous for such a lack of decorum. Her image tarnished quickly. Karen's pride and joy, her luxurious lifestyle, began crumbling. She was spotted at common retail stores, no longer striding confidently, but scrambling with a list of groceries like the rest of us. The vibrant designer clothes were replaced with simpler, more humble attire. Her car, which used to shine like a diamond, was traded in for something more practical, less glamorous. It was clear she had been brought to the common ground, that same reality every other ordinary person lived in, day in and day out. I must admit, every now and then, a part of me pitied her. But then I'd recall the sheer arrogance she displayed, believing she had dominion over the rest of us. It was humbling, watching the mighty fall, a stark reminder that fairness still existed. Months later, as summer turned to autumn, she returned to the library. This time, things were different. She was quieter, more cautious. No longer did she pace with her phone. No longer did her voice dominate the room. Karen had been tamed by the hand of karma. We watched, silent witnesses to her transformation. She sought no redemption, spoke little, and stayed secluded in corners, eyes downcast. The loud, brash woman, who once thought the world was hers to command, was gone. In her place stood someone broken, reshaped by the consequences of her actions. Finally, the library returned to its former glory, a haven of quiet study and peaceful contemplation. Karen's story, although filled with misfortune from her perspective, taught all of us patrons a valuable lesson about respect for shared spaces and the quiet power of community. It's strange, but in a way, Karen and the library both found redemption. The library regained its peace and order, and Karen perhaps learned humility and the value of consideration for others. In the end, everyone got what they deserved, a fitting balance restored.
I would like to thank you for watching the video to the end. To encourage us to make more videos, please like, subscribe, comment, as well as share. Check out this other video if you haven't already.